Hey guys, my name is Lilly and today I want to talk about my experience on Naked and Afraid, what I hated about it and also what I liked about it and what I learned from it. So if you want to know about my experience on Naked and Afraid, please first watch the episode. You can watch it on Discovery Plus. You will find the link in the description below. And after you watched it, please watch this video because otherwise I will give you too many spoilers. Okay, so now let's talk about something I really hated on Naked and Afraid. So first of all, being naked is quite extreme. You cannot make it more extreme than this show because without clothes you're completely exposed to the elements, rain, sun, wind, but also to the ground when you're lying down. So it's really painful to lie on the floor if you are naked. And it really hurt on the hip actually, so lying on a flat floor is not ideal, especially because our floor was really hard. So I've never seen some type of soil which was this hard, like concrete. So initially my plan was that I wanted to dig a hole underneath me. I wanted to fill it up with some hot coals from the fire and then close it and then use it like a warm bed. But that didn't work out because the soil there was like concrete. It was really hard and you could not really dig into the soil. I also tried to dig out some roots for my grass jacket that I built in the first few days, but it was not possible. I could not dig up any pine roots that I needed for the grass jacket. So what I've taken for my grass jacket as a frame was strips from the yucca leaf. And then I just made a simple square knot and this is how I, basically wove my grass jacket. However, the knots of the yucca strips, they really hurt my back and they really stung me throughout the night. So it was really painful. Also the grass stung me throughout the night and I actually had some wounds on my back because of the grass jacket. And then also when the grass jacket was disintegrating and breaking because grass doesn't hold for a long time, then I had to lie on some juniper twigs. And those twigs are really uncomfortable. It really hurt my back. So here's a photo that I want to show you about how my back looked when I came home after the challenge. And you can see that it had wounds all over. And those wounds were from the grass jacket, but also from the juniper boughs that I lay on. And I had to lay higher because actually I have acid reflux and I cannot lay just straight on the floor. So I had to build myself a raised pillow. And I had no other choice but to lie on this really painful stuff. And it hurt. And that was not the only thing which was uncomfortable. The second thing that was really uncomfortable was the fire itself. So unfortunately, most of the firewood that we found was juniper, and very seldomly we found some pine wood. Now the problem with juniper is that it's exploding. I've never seen such a wood like this. It's the worst wood of all. So if you light juniper wood, every 2 to 5 minutes it will make a small explosion and it will throw embers left and right, up and down the fireplace. So Sam and I, we were bombarded by this flying coal. It was constantly landing on us. It was going on like this for 20 nights. By the end of the challenge, we really had a trauma from this firewood because it was exploding so often. And it happened all 2 to 5 minutes. So sometimes it was shooting in Sam's direction, sometimes in my direction. So we had wounds all over our bodies, burning wounds here, everywhere. He even got such a coal on his, private parts, which you could see in the episode. But this was going on for 20 nights, the entire challenge, all of the nights. It was completely crazy. I think mentally this was the toughest part that we had to go through because we really needed a warm fire because the high desert is a cold place in the night, right? So we really needed that fire. We had to stay close, but at the same time, it was shooting us with coals. And now I can laugh about it, but when you're in this desperate situation where you are naked, tired, and really starving, this becomes so much more difficult to endure. So I really hated this firewood the most about our challenge. That was the most challenging part when it comes to survival psychology. And it was really bad. Like, we were constantly waking up because coals were shooting at us from the fireplace. So it was wild. And because of this, we lacked sleeping. So the most I got of sleep, average each night, was 2.5 hours. And then usually we slept like maybe 20-30 minutes during the day, but that was it. So I did not get much more sleep, except when I had the grass jacket on, which was in this first 7 to 10 days. I slept like 4 hours. And also the grass jacket was protecting my upper body from getting, bombarded by the coals because of this freaking juniper wood. So it was really tough. It looks like a tough challenge if you watch our episode, but in reality it was much tougher than that. It was tougher. It was really hard. This place is not an easy place to survive because, first of all, you don't have a lot of resources. So it was quite a scarce area, not like here in Austria where you have 20 different kind of woods here in this forest. The place in New Mexico was really scarce in building materials, in grass. It looked like it had a lot of grass, but it did not. So you would try to pick some grass and you would only pick like 3 leaves of grass. So it was really, there were not a lot of building materials around. Then what I liked about our challenge is that, first of all, we did not make any grave mistakes. Some smaller mistakes happened, but that's okay. But in general, we have done a really good job in surviving. Especially, I'm very proud about my fish trap that I built. And when Sam was going away scouting for a new water source, I started building this fish trap. And when he came back, I was already finished with it. So that was like 5 hours later or something. So I built a complete fish trap in 5 hours. And then we set it in at the evening. We covered it with some twigs and branches. And the next morning, we already had the first crayfish in the trap. So I'm really proud of this fish trap that I built it in one day, set it in the first night, and the next morning we already had something to eat. So the fish trap was constantly, providing us with food. Now, crayfish is not the biggest meal, but it's really good, and it was a treat every time we got one, and we caught many of them. So I'm not quite sure how many I caught with the trap and how many I caught by hand, but altogether I think we caught over 25 crayfish, and that was really good. So that was a constant staple of food, but of course it was not enough to sustain us for 3 weeks. So what we also have eaten a lot was purslane. Purslane is a wild edible. It's actually a vegan superfood, and the entire grassland was covered in it. So we had like one big bowl of purslane each day, and that really kept us going, and also that filled our stomachs. So we did not really have any hunger pain. Yeah, then what else did we eat? Yeah, at the end of the challenge you can see me getting a hare with the bow. That was my biggest kill with the bow, and I'm really proud of it. By that time I was really starving. I had lost a lot of body weight, but still I was able to make a clean shot at the hare, and I was still able to draw the bow, which has 35 pounds. So the hare was standing like this, the head was here, the tail was here, and I shot it directly into the lungs, so it was a perfect shot in the perfect spot. It was right in the kill zone, and then the arrow was going in like this, up to the feathers, and in that moment the hare jumped like that and came to lie like this, and that all happened in 1.5 seconds. So it died in 1.5 seconds. It was a clean kill, perfect. It was perfect, and after I guarded it, I could see that I hit it directly in the lungs, and that killed it instantly. I did not hit the heart and the liver, so we could eat that. So it was a perfect shot. So it was some protein that we really needed to get to the end of the challenge. Now, at the beginning of the challenge, we killed a rattlesnake together. And if you are wondering what rattlesnake is tasting like, it tastes like chicken, but not as good as chicken. So it has a chicken taste, but it tastes a little bit less great than chicken, but still very, very good. Also, if you are wondering what lizard tastes like, it also tastes like snake. Now, the absolute best meat that I've eaten is ground squirrel. That's my favorite meat, and it has much more fat on it than the hare that we ate. So ground squirrel was definitely my favorite meat. It tastes a little bit gamey, but also a little bit like beef. And then also it has a lot of fat on it, so that was giving me a lot of energy on the challenge. So I was really proud of how my bow and arrow skills worked out. But there was one problem with the bow. So in the first days, I did not shoot my bow very often. So I lost a lot of my muscles, and then I have missed the squirrel the first few times. So it really was hard to shoot at a small target in this condition where you are already tired, naked, starving, and then you try to hunt something with your bow which has a small size of a target. So it was really hard to shoot a small size squirrel and lizards. But then I realized, hey, I have to train again with the bow. So then I started to train with the bow again. I was shooting at some dirty hill, which was the opposite where we were sleeping. And then I got my accuracy back, and since then I was doing better with the bow. So you really have to be aware of this problem, that most of your survival skills are going to degrade because of the condition that you are in. So you might make mistakes that otherwise you won't make if you're clothed and well fed. And also you're going to hurt yourself a lot more than if you were clothed and fed. So what happened to me on day 3 was I was constantly hurting myself. One time I've broken a branch, and then it got stuck in my finger or hand here. Then I stepped on a branch with a small twig standing out, and I really hurt myself. I had a hole in my foot. Then I stepped into a cacti. So on day 3, it was really, you still have energy, but because you're so tired, you're a little bit drunk, and it takes you getting used to this kind of condition. So on day 3, you're going to hurt yourself the most. At least that's what happened to me. But after that, it's getting better again, because you're getting really slow, because you're in this ketogenic state, and that makes you really, really slow. So from day 4 onwards, we did not hurt us so much anymore. So getting hurt is a real problem in a survival situation. Now, gladly, we only had some really small injuries. But if you really get injured in a survival situation because you're sleep deprived or hungry, that can be a problem. But gladly, it did not happen to us. So we did not break any bones or cut ourselves with the knife. So that was the good thing about it. But for me, I learned day 3, you have to be most cautious. But from day 4 and onwards, it's going to get better, because you're going to get really slow. You start walking slow. If you pick up a firewood, you're going to do it like this. You can actually see it in the episode that later on we are super slow when talking, super slow walking, super slow picking up firewood. So that was really funny. And because of the slowliness, you hurt yourself less. So that's the good thing about it. The bad thing about that is that you can't get things done anymore so quickly. What else? The shelter was fine. The bark on the shelter was all of the bark that we found. So some people said we should have closed the shelter in the middle. Well, you could if you find more building materials, but we just didn't find more bark. That was all that we find. Shelter was great. It was reflecting the heat on us. Now, unfortunately, on day 10, it was getting really cold, so I had to stay in the shelter for 1 day. And then from that day onwards, I always had to wait until the sun would come out, because the desert is a really strange environment. So here in Austria, it's going to be warm even if the sun goes away. But in the desert, as soon as the sun goes away under the horizon, it's going to be super cold. But then as soon as the sun is rising again over the horizon in the morning, you maybe have to wait 1 more hour, or at least me, and then you can leave the shelter again. It's a really strange environment, and it's the total opposite from here in Austria. What really sucked about our place was that there were not really a lot of animals in the canyon. So then at the end of the challenge, I realized that most of the hare are up at the grassland, and then I walked up to the grassland and shot a hare. I wish I had done that sooner. So sometimes you have to live at a certain place to realize where the game is. Now, the most important thing about this challenge is that you are there as a team, and if you work together, you're going to make it. So I'm really happy that Sam and we got along so well, and Sam is a great guy. He has a really good heart. So we really worked well together, and we supported each other. We had each other's back, and this is how you get through a survival situation. So he saved my ass when I was cold, and I was in turn providing him with a lot of protein. So it was just perfect. We were the perfect team. So we only had like one discussion about where we want to build the shelter, and it's okay to have different opinions, and we talked about it like adults. So we had this discussion, but it was not a fight, and then in the end we were a great team together, and that's what's counting in a survival situation. You want to stick together, because together you can really make it through the challenge. And this was a really hard place to survive. So in the coldest night, Sam went out of the shelter, and then he came back and said, "Lilly, I can see my own breath. It's super, super cold." So we did not have any thermometers in the challenge, so we never knew our temperature. But when I came home from the challenge, I typed into Google, "At what temperature can I see my own breath?" And then the answer was, you can see your breath below 7.5 degrees Celsius. So this is how cold it was that night, 7.5 degrees Celsius. I don't know how much that is in Fahrenheit, but it was super cold this one night. And then this one night and the next day I had to stay in the shelter because it was so cold. And also it was cloudy. So this one day I really had to stay in the shelter, and I had to wait until the next day, until the sun came up again over the horizon, and then I could start working again. But that was really tough, and it really sucked that I had to stay in the shelter for this one day. And yeah, I did not like it. So by that time my grass jacket already was destroyed, and I attempted to build another one, but there was just so few grass in the second location anymore that I just thought, you know what, instead of building a grass jacket, I go hunting with the bow, because we desperately needed some protein. Yeah, so the bow definitely saved my ass. Unfortunately, I was not able to increase my body weight before the challenge. And that's maybe because of my thyroid condition. So I really have a hard time gaining weight. And I really tried, but it was not working out. So yeah, unfortunately, that was a problem. And in the end, I lost like 13 kilograms. That's 26 pounds, I believe. So I lost a lot of weight. But still we survived and we made it. But in this cold environment, naked, it was really tough. It was the toughest thing I've ever done in my life. And the most important thing that I learned from this challenge is every layer of clothing that you have on your body in a survival situation is a lifesaver. Not only because it's keeping you warm, but also because it's helping you saving calories and it's protecting you against crackling fire, for example. So with shoes, with a jean and with a jacket like this challenge would have been much, much easier. It's really the nakedness that makes this challenge so extreme and so hard. And it's definitely the hardest thing that I ever did in my life. It was my biggest dream to do something like this. But I can tell you, I was really worried that I will not make it because I was already very thin when I entered the challenge. And also I had this thyroid condition. So before the challenge, I did like 5 survival overnighters in the forest without sleeping bags and tarps. And it was really hard. So I did not know if I could do it, actually. But it's incredible what a human body can endure. I don't know how I coped with sleeping so few hours each day, but it's still somehow I still functioned. So I made it, and I'm really proud of it that I made it as a thin woman and also because of my autoimmune disease. So I can say now that I'm really proud of this challenge and that I completed it at day 21. It was definitely the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was really tough. Sometimes you think you cannot do it anymore, but then you just have to suck it up and keep going, march with your head. It was crazy. It was a crazy challenge, and if you see the episode, it seems really tough, but in reality, it was so much tougher. And yeah, I think this challenge made me stronger. Also, I now know my boundaries, and I can tell you, I never want to be as thin anymore, and it definitely changed my view on prepping. And on starving. So now I know how long I can go without food or with very little food. And because of this challenge, I definitely want to prep more. I want to have more food at home so that in an emergency I can still be strong, because not having food is a real problem. After not eating for 3 days, you will not be so good at surviving anymore, and it's going to be really tough on surviving without food. So I definitely want to have more preps at home now and store more food, especially carbs. Doing this challenge without any carbs was hard. We were in full ketosis, and while our body can do that for a certain period of time, it was still very, very hard because you get really slow. And yeah, that's probably one of the hardest things in the challenge. Alright guys, so this is it for today. I really want to thank you for watching. I think I have talked enough for today, and I have answered most of the questions that you guys had. If you have more questions, put them in the comment section of this video, and I might make another Q&A video about Naked and Afraid.